was the 17th of July, just past 7 p.m. Andy was devastated. His mother, Pauline, had just broken the unfortunate news that his father had left her for someone else sexier. This meant that she no longer had a husband, and that more importantly to poor Andy, he no longer had a father. Throughout the rest of July, he struggled with depression and came extremely close to giving up. The realization that he had lost the father figure that had always been exceptionally important to him was finally kicking in. All those fond memories of their time together suddenly flooded him. That one time they were fishing, Andy fell in the lake because the fish overpowered him. Thrashing at football, and all those times his father came home drunk and became violent. In Andy's mind, these drunken fits of rage were always brushed off as occasional outbursts because of a stress-filled life. Due to his autism, Andy was vastly intelligent, and while he rightly took his autism in stride and correctly viewed it as a strength rather than a weakness, it had always led to two significant problems. The first was not being able to pick up on certain things, which is why he never realized until now that his father was a violent and selfish man. Secondly, he suffered from social anxiety, and difficulty with making friends plagued him. He admired many people and shared similar interests, but ultimately struggled to connect with them because of how shy and overwhelmed he could suddenly get. As a result of this, he was hit even harder by his father's actions, as he had no friends to rely on and be comforted by. Andy's mother, Pauline, was aware of this, and despite her being upset, she bought Andy an invaluable gift to try and comfort him in any way possible: a laptop. Her reasoning was not only to ensure that Andy had something to occupy his time and prevent boredom, but it was also a new way for him to find friends and socialize online. She hoped communicating online would help him feel less shy when approaching people, and it seemed to initially take away the immense pain he was experiencing, which was great. He quickly created an Instagram, Facebook, and Discord page to meet new people. All was seemingly swimmingly, but people began to laugh at him and send hateful messages because of who he was. Andy had never owned a laptop before, so he didn't know what he was doing. This led to situations like him messaging his mother, but accidentally sending these messages into open posts and public forums, leading to humiliation. Things worsened when he told these people about his new idea for a fledgling startup project. "You'll never achieve anything, you absolute fucking cretin. Not in a trillion years. Might as well quit while you're ahead. It saves you wasting your time and us laughing when you fail." These horrible, offensive, spiteful insults were hurled at Andy, shaking him to his core. This deeply affected Andy so much. As a result, he ended up spending August in isolation. However, this could benefit him as it provided vital time to work on something. Fueled by the anguish that he still felt because of his father, he worked hard on creating a program to simulate human behavior. Why did he do this? He wanted to ensure that in the future, he wouldn't have to suffer from bullying or missing a cue, because using his program, getting to know people and reading their emotions and thoughts would be a lot easier. December 1st rolled around, and Andy was starting to communicate with more and more people. He took the newfound knowledge from previous experiences with people online, and now made sure to send his mom messages more privately. He tried to find interests in people similar to his, and created engaging and meaningful conversations out of them. He noted these topics of interest and other aspects of the individuals, and put them into his algorithm. Based on the results, he'd know whether they were compatible with him, which was reassuring. To the shock of Andy and Pauline, the program had grown rapidly in popularity over the past few months, and Andy became rich and famous as a result of this just within a few months. His dad caught wind of this and wanted to become a part of their lives again, but they weren't gullible or stupid. Far from it. In fact, ironically, Pauline ran her husband through the algorithm, and even it determined that he was completely unreliable. Andy's father tried his best to worm his way back in, but Pauline and Andy were fed up with these desperate and pitiful cries, so they moved away to a new address so they would no longer need to be disturbed. The flights were booked, and Edinburgh, Scotland, was set firmly in their sights. The most exciting aspect of this was similar for Andy and his mother. Andy had a friend called Levi on Discord and lived in Berwick-upon-Tweed, which is quite close, whereas his mom had a handsome man named Rodriguez. While managing the algorithm for company, Andy, he just so happened to live in Edinburgh again. It was now mid-December and everything was great. Andy and his mom were living thanks to the immense success of the program comfortably. Although it was a cold December's Eve, Andy felt like shopping and exploring Edinburgh, which was still relatively unfamiliar to him. It was a frigid night, the city barren and ominous. As the snow began to fall and the trees glistened, he was starstruck. An excellent sight was gracing his eyes. Among the trees was a little gift shop with intriguing and aesthetically appealing lights illuminating its exterior. He was so intrigued by these lights that he strolled up to the shop and looked into the front window. It turned out to be a pawn shop. Andy had been looking for Christmas gifts, so he thought it'd be at least worth a punt to browse this shop. Knocking the door several times, he noticed a slight, frail silhouette slowly making its way to the door. "How can I help you, young man?" passionately spoke the elderly gentleman. Andy explained he was looking for a nice Christmas gift. The gentleman led him to the technology section and the assortment of phones. He had amassed quite a collection of brand new phones. "I'll take a few, kind sir." He smiled at the gentleman as he knew what he would ask next. "How many is a few, young man?" Andy continued to smile, thinking of the happiness that this would bring. 173, please." A few days later, and it was the 26th of December, 2018. Christmas had come and gone. Pauline had met a new man called Dan while he was working as their business manager. He proposed to her on Christmas Day. While Andy was initially quite skeptical, he passed the reliability test, the only evidence needed to prove that Dan was perfect for Pauline. Being in such a positive mood, due to the thought of him and his mom finally being truly happy again, he started to wrap up the 173 iPhones. As bizarre as it sounds, this number wasn't random. Andy had noted every person that previously said kind things, stuck up for him, and was overall a good friend to him. Now that he was living comfortably, successfully, he wanted to spread a little Christmas cheer and give something back to the people who genuinely cared. Luckily, the iPhone boxes were only so small that he could fit all 173 into his mom's car boot, and they drove to the post office together. They were all sent off to be delivered to multiple addresses. To show this appreciation for his true friends, he wrote a heartwarming message on the back of each of the 173 parcels. It read, "To my best friend from the unknown, I hope this gift brings you some happiness. If so, I will be happy." He originally intended for the parcel to be anonymous. Giving back was all that mattered to him personally. Them knowing about it was irrelevant. Unfortunately, though, Andy forgot to tell the post office this while providing the iPhone cases. Ultimately, his name and address were unintentionally plastered on the back of the parcels. It was now New Year's Day. Andy, his mother, and his new stepfather, Terry. He had just booked his holiday from work. A client was asking for numbers and book for his business accounts to be sorted out, but it was New Year's Day, and all that mattered to him was family. They were chatting amongst themselves until a knock at the door. They lived in rural Scotland. They had to drive 30 miles to reach the nearest post office, so a knock at the door, it wasn't heard of. Terry got up, curious as to who it was on the other side of the door. It was a courier with a parcel. It was from one of the addresses Andy sent an iPhone. It turned out to be the same package, unopened. Somehow the note had managed to stay firmly attached. It said, "Andy, you left your address visible, you donut. Thanks for the sweet message, though I don't want an iPhone. Being your friend is all I need. Love, Davina. P.S. I live nearby. Meet me at the old Hitchington Lake on the 5th of January at noon." He boarded the bus around 1 p.m., chilled and ready to meet Davina. As the bus drove, he noticed small cottages, a barrage of wildlife, and a surprisingly dry Scottish day. He loved the atmosphere, mainly striking ambience that was somewhat comforting. The bus arrived at 1:30, which was good, as he wanted to practice his social skills and be prepared. Standing by the river, he noticed a partially broken swing. Usually he would stay clear of this, but he needed the confidence to speak to Davina, so he decided to live a little. It was fun at first, but then the rope dwindled, and within seconds it snapped, and he fell directly into the lake. When the fishing incident happened with his dad, he was okay, because he was with someone, but this time he was on his own. And swimming to safety wasn't an option, because he didn't know how to. It all seemed over, and just as he started to flail and struggle, a faint voice was audible. Suddenly, a young girl of a similar age to Andy dived into the river and grabbed him. She guided him out of the water and saved him. He was shaken, but he was still alive. "You saved me." "Andy, I told you to meet me by the river, not in the river." As if it were destiny, Davina and Andy quickly grew to like each other. Love at first sight. Andy endured a challenging year, but he had gained a new family against all of the seemingly impossible odds. Not one new addition, but two.